All right, Adam, I'm coming to you here first. Tell me this. Why the Steelers for Russ? How did this happen?
Well, Molly, here's the situation. Essentially, last week, the Denver Broncos granted Russell Wilson permission to speak with other teams. Once they did that, he started his free agent tour early. So he was able to speak in an exploratory way with the New York Giants. He was able to meet with the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, spent about 6 hours there on Friday. Mike Tomlin has gone up against Russell Wilson twice in his career. In those 2 games, Mike Tomlin is 0-2, and Russell Wilson has thrown 8 touchdowns and no interceptions. Mike Tomlin's been pretty clear about the fact that they wanted to bring in somebody to compete with Kenny Pickett this season. Russell Wilson is essentially on a situation here where the Denver Broncos are paying $37.8 million of his salary, while the Pittsburgh Steelers only have to pay him the veteran minimum $1.2. There's no risk at all involved for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now Russell Wilson comes into Pittsburgh. He takes over there and competes with Kenny Pickett for the starting job. He believes he'll be the guy. He doesn't go there if he doesn't think he's not going to be the guy. And the Steelers have a new quarterback to go up against Kenny Pickett. That's what I think he was thinking in choosing the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Adam Schefter, always good to see you, buddy. Thank you for being on the show.
Stephen.
Quick, absolutely. Quick question here. Did they pick Wilson because of the low risk, or did they pick Wilson because the Chicago Bears are asking for too much and they weren't willing to pay that price for Justin Fields?
Well, Stephen A., I believe that they picked Russell Wilson because he fit what they were trying to do and he was the right price, both. And it's not that Chicago is asking too much. It's that as the Bears reviewed their options, or as the Steelers reviewed their options, they made the determination that this solution to their particular quarterback situation was better than the one of trading whatever it would take to go get Justin Fields with the 5th-year option that they'd have to pick up and guarantee or not, have to give up the draft compensation, whereas they can go get Russell Wilson, who's been to 9 Pro Bowls, who's won a Super Bowl, who last year threw 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And I know the Broncos moved on from him, and Sean Payton gave him his permission to go seek another team. But the fact of the matter is, he is an accomplished guy. And Pittsburgh's paying him $1.2 million without any compensation to the Denver Broncos, which is why we say no risk. So I think
Adam,
all those factors enter into why it's Russell.
Adam, before we bring in Shannon and Dan, who's going to be the next quarterback to find a home?
Well, Molly, everybody keeps waiting for Kirk Cousins. That is the big domino to fall. But while we're waiting, Baker Mayfield goes back to Tampa, Russell Wilson goes to Pittsburgh. To me, Kirk Cousins has to make a decision because there's so much money, so much at stake, so much tied up in him that Minnesota needs to get an answer and Atlanta needs to get an answer. And those seem to be the 2 places that are obviously courting him, interested in him, and we'll see what he chooses. But Cousins is the most obvious guy out there, and there's so much riding on it that, to me, I would think that we get an answer from him probably at some point today, but we shall see.
All right. Adam, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. I want to bring in Shannon and Dan now. Do we have those gentlemen? There they are. Shannon, good morning. Great to see you. Shannon, tell me this. The Steelers, do you feel like
guys.
They're the best team to let Russ cook?
I do. They have a very strong defense, and I think when Russ looks at it, you look at the options they got: Jalen Warren, Najee Harris running the football. They got you look at the wide receiver core. Now it looks like Deontay Johnson might be on the trading block, but I love George Pickens. I love Freiermuth. Offensive line is decent, not great, but decent. And I think Russ is in the ideal situation. He goes in and he's competing against Kenny Pickett. Now, Kenny Pickett has had 2 years to solidify this job. If Kenny Pickett was as entrenched as many thought he was, Russ would not be an option. The mere fact that Russ is an option lets you know that they're not as high or as strong on Kenny Pickett as many believe they are. I don't believe he holds off Russ. Russ will be the starter. I think this is an ideal situation for Russ. He goes to a team that I think they believe in him. I think Mike Tomlin really likes him. I think Mike Tomlin realizes that Russ is better than anything that he's had since a young Ben Roethlisberger, and this gives him the best chance because he's tired of going, he's never had a losing season. That's not good enough for Mike Tomlin, and I think Steeler ownership has made that abundantly clear. Winning season 10-7, that's not good enough for them. They want to be in position where they can compete for championships, and they haven't been able to do that in a very long time. And I think Russ is a viable option. But the question is, Russ, are they getting 4 or 5 year ago Russ? Or are they getting a Russ that the Seattle Seahawks says, nah, we're good, we're going to move on? The Broncos says, we're going to eat $85 million in dead money, and we'll pay you $38, $37 million to move on. So the question is, what Russ are they getting? Whatever the case that may be, that Russ that they're getting is better than Kenny Pickett.
Well, let me say this to you, Molly, D.O. and whatever. I am very, very, very disgusted with Shannon Sharpe this morning, and I'm glad that he's on the screen right now. I expect more enthusiasm. We are down here in Austin, Texas. I had to give a speech for South by Southwest yesterday. This brother is being honored with the podcast of the year. This is, I mean, usually you would think that Shannon would be a bit, I don't know whether it's true or not or whatever the case may be, but this is stuff that I'm hearing down here. This is stuff that I'm hearing. My point is, with all the great work that Shannon is doing, you would think that he would be a bit more enthusiastic when he's talking about Russell Wilson. And what does he do? Oh, no, that's not something that's going on here. He said,
that's not Patrick Mahomes.
Excuse me, put Shannon back on. I want to see that man's face. I want to see that man's face. First of all, don't give me that, bro. Let me tell you something right now. I want to hear that. This is Kenny Pickett we're talking about. Anything is an upgrade with the quarterback situation the Steelers had last year. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and rave about Russell Wilson, but when you say Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitchell Trubisky, that's what you had last year. And now here we are today, and we talking about Russell Wilson and if he's this. Please, he's thrown 26 touchdowns last year. The Steelers have thrown 25 in the last 2 years. Shannon, I expect more enthusiasm from you, bro.
It depends on what Russell Wilson they're going to get, Shannon. If they get any Russell Wilson but 2022, this team will contend for the division championship. Yes, I understand Baltimore and Cincinnati are there. They're obviously the favorites. Cleveland's defense, what do we get with Deshaun? That's the only bad year Russell Wilson's had is 2022. Shannon, Stephen A. Molly, I said it this morning. I think this is the dumbest conversation I think I've been a part of in the last 18 months of what Russell Wilson is. Russell Wilson, in his last 4 seasons, he's gone 40 touchdowns and like 11 picks. Then he went 25 touchdowns and 7 picks. Then he had the bad 2022 year with Nathaniel Hackett. He went like 16 touchdowns and 11 picks. Last year he had 26 and 8. We talk about Russell Wilson in this public forum like he's an afterthought, like he can't play. Maybe he's not, and I don't want to sell it as he is this top 5 quarterback. But everything that says play-wise, you can tell me Sean Payton carried him. 4 years of evidence. In his last 4 years, he's got like 110 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. But we talk about him like he's a backup for some reason. If he just goes and plays the way he did last year, next year for Pittsburgh, they're going to win a playoff game. That's all he's got to go do. Russell Wilson is still a top 12 quarterback in the NFL.
Go ahead, Shannon.
But my question is, if he's everything that you're saying that he is, why would 2 teams move off of him for potentially Geno Smith and Drew Lock, and then move off of him for the kid that I forget his name. He came from the Raiders. Why would teams continuously move off a guy that you said is what you believe he is? Something is not adding up.
Well, can I answer that?
Go ahead.
Can I answer that real quick? Number one, Shannon. Far be it for me, the non-football player on this panel, to bring this up. But you were in Seattle for a decade, so that's not like parting ways per se. He was there for a decade, and then in the case of Denver, well, he got contaminated by himself and his ego because it was a lot of non-football stuff really alienated folks. And then you had Nathaniel Hackett. That's a double whammy. So that might have something to do with it. And then Sean Payton comes in there, and he instantly does not like you because of that residue, and that might have something to do with it as well.
I'd see, Shannon, that's where I stand on it. You know, like we did, Louis Riddick and I called the Monday Night Football game after they moved on from Russ, and there was the overwhelming thing of it was just time. They wanted new leadership. They wanted a new voice. And again, he was going to be asking for an extension.
But why?
So all those because all those variables, they wanted something different and something new. That's just, it had just come to that point. And if you go to Denver, we all knew that Sean Payton going in there was going to want his guy. Russell Wilson wasn't necessarily his guy. Now, does his play warrant $40 million a year pay, Shannon? No. But his play is still good, solid, relatively high-level starting quarterback play in the NFL. No question.
Well, help Dio. Can you help me understand what team wants to move on from a guy that threw 40 touchdowns with 11 picks? What team wants to move on from a guy that threw 25 touchdowns and 7 INTs? Tell me. So Jim Harbaugh, does he want to move on from Justin Herbert? Does he want his guy?
No, because they haven't been together for 10 years. I don't know Russell, Shannon. I don't know.
Hold on.
But you hear
Sean Payton hadn't been with Russell but for 4 days. So I'm asking, you said Sean Payton wants his guy. Does Jim Harbaugh wants his guy? Does he want someone other than Justin Herbert? Now, I need you to,
I get what you're saying. I understand the correlation you're making.
So that's all I'm saying. Look, I hope Russ is able to become Russ of 4 or 5 years ago. And that is the question that we're asking. Stephen A., to answer your point, yes, he's better than Mason Rudolph. He's better than Kenny Pickett. He's better than Mitchell Trubisky. But that's not good enough. Just by being better, does that ensure you the division? Does that ensure you a deep run in the playoff just being better than marginal quarterbacks? Absolutely not. And that's what I'm saying.
Number one, they were 10-7 last year, like Dio just said. But number two, and more importantly, Shannon, there's nobody out there that you could have gotten that's going to guarantee you the division against Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow. So whatever they got wasn't going to guarantee them that. So I'm not holding them to that standard. I'm simply saying they upgraded significantly. And here's the turn-off deal. Let me turn my attention to you. Because let me tell y'all something right now. You, Adam Schefter, and everybody else, love you guys. Y'all gonna get big-time attitude from me if everybody keeps going out there talking about, well, you know, he's got to fight for the job and he's going to compete with Kenny Pickett, and I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. If this man, I don't want to hear that at all. As far as I'm concerned, if it is a competition, Russell Wilson need to go. He don't even need to bother coming to the Steel City. Because I know this much, a 9-time Pro Bowler, a Super Bowl champion, if you got to come in based on the Kenny Pickett that we saw this past season, and in his 2 years, 13 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, that dude, if you're competing with that dude and it's nip and tuck, and wait a minute, that's not what I'm counting on. I'm looking at Russell Wilson as a starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Shannon, Stephen A., I totally agree. Like, I don't think this is a competition. Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback. And I'll go back and say, last year, Russell Wilson was a top 10, top 12 quarterback, and he's going in a better situation now than in Pittsburgh. He's got George Pickens. He's got Freiermuth. He's got Deontay. We'll see if he's on the team. That offensive line was getting better. My point is this, Shannon. He does not need to be a better version of what he was last year. If you just copy and paste. Now, sacks, you hope they go down a little bit. Arthur Smith wants to run the football, play action pass. But my point is this. Yesterday morning, the Steelers didn't realistically have a shot within the division. We would fingers crossed and speak positively because of Mike Tomlin. And I agree with you, Stephen A. I'm not sitting here pounding the table going absolutely versus Baltimore and Cincinnati or Cleveland. But they got a shot now. They got a chance to compete within the healthiest division in football, and that's because they have Russell Wilson.